The Supreme Court is one of the most important institutions in our country, and its decisions have impacted the lives of millions of Americans for over 200 years.
In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions.
The Supreme Court delivered a landmark decision on campaign finance today.
A historic Supreme Court decision legalizing same-sex marriage across the land.
But how did the court become such an important and influential institution? The Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States and decides whether laws and actions taken by the government are constitutional or violate individual rights. While its role is well established today, it hasn't always been that way. Before the original 13 colonies gained their independence from Great Britain, legal powers were exercised through the royal authority of the king. But the founding fathers decided they'd do things a little differently and divided the government into 3 separate but equal branches: the executive branch, the president, the legislative branch, Congress, and the judicial branch, the court system. The Supreme Court sits at the very top of the judicial branch, and its powers were established in the Constitution, giving the president the authority to nominate justices and Congress the authority to approve those nominations by a simple majority. According to the Constitution, justice appointments are for life, and although members of the bench can be impeached, up until now, vacancies have only happened when a member retires or passes away.
The death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has created an opening on the U.S. Supreme Court.
While the court has been made up of 9 justices since 1869, that number has fluctuated over time, from as few as 6 to as many as 10. But regardless of the court's size, there must be one Chief Justice and the remaining Associate Justices. And despite the fact that Supreme Court members occupy one of the most consequential roles in American politics, the Constitution doesn't lay out any rules for who can actually serve on the bench. It doesn't even require members to have a law degree. In fact, over half of the Chief Justices who have served on the court had no prior judicial experience at all. In recent decades, though, nominees are expected to have extensive legal experience, and their records are carefully examined for clues as to how they may rule on future cases.
Do you agree with Justice Scalia's view that Roe was wrongly decided?
Again, I can't pre-commit or say, yes, I'm going in with some agenda, because I'm not.
While 94% of Supreme Court members have been white men, recent nominees have been more diverse. Sandra Day O'Connor became the first female justice in 1981. Sonia Sotomayor was the first Hispanic justice in 2009. And Ketanji Brown Jackson made history as the first Black woman to sit on the bench in 2022.
The greatest country in the world, the United States of America, will be better because of you.
The Supreme Court's powers and jurisdiction have expanded significantly since it was founded in 1789. In 1803, Marbury v. Madison permanently established the right of judicial review, the court's power to review federal laws and decide whether they are consistent with the Constitution. The ruling established that the court's decisions can only be overturned by future rulings from the Supreme Court itself, or through the difficult process of amending the Constitution. Since then, this institution has played a key role in shaping social and political issues in the United States, and its decisions have had lasting impacts on American society. It touches on various aspects of everyday life, from individual and civil rights to education, employment, criminal justice, LGBTQ+ rights, immigration, and more. But the justices' decisions have not always served to protect Americans' freedoms. Sometimes they've even done the opposite. In the 1857 Dred Scott case, the Supreme Court upheld the institution of slavery, declaring, among other things, that Black Americans could not be citizens. The decision further fueled tensions that eventually resulted in civil war. And after the war, in Plessy v. Ferguson, the court's separate but equal decision upheld racist segregation laws known as Jim Crow. Now, while the justices typically rely on precedent, meaning their decisions are guided by the opinions of previous courts, they aren't actually required to follow precedent and can even undo it. In the 1954 case, Brown v. Board of Education, that's exactly what happened when the Supreme Court overturned the ruling in Plessy v. Ferguson.
The court rendered a verdict of far-reaching social significance by its decision that segregation in tax-supported schools is unconstitutional.
But not following precedent can be controversial. In 2022, a new conservative majority overturned the landmark 1973 decision in Roe v. Wade, which guaranteed access to abortion across the United States.
The Supreme Court has ruled on the future of abortion rights.
The ruling shook the country. Since then, over a dozen states have implemented restrictive abortion bans, impacting millions of women and ending nearly 50 years of abortion access in those states. This decision, along with other actions in recent years, have led to increased scrutiny of the Supreme Court's partisanship and impartiality. In 2016, Republicans in the Senate broke with tradition and refused to hold a vote on President Barack Obama's Supreme Court nominee for nearly a year.
The overwhelming view of the Republican conference of the Senate in the Senate is that this nomination should not be filled.
Conservative senators held out until Republican President Donald Trump came into office, who not only replaced Obama's nominee, but also named 2 other justices during his term. The result is a heavily conservative 6-3 majority that makes up the court today. While many questions remain about the future actions of the court, one thing is for sure. While the court itself is not an elected body, Americans hold significant power by being able to elect the senators and president who ultimately appoint and confirm these justices. Justices who play a significant role in shaping the country's laws and policies, and who will no doubt impact the lives of everyday Americans for years to come.